Shahara. Welcome back to my channel. So, I finished the third book in the Isle of the Lost. I almost said Isle of the Movie. It's silent. What's wrong with me? You would think I don't read. Okay, moving on. So, third book of the I still can't talk. Isle of the Lost series. There's 4 in all. My mom is currently reading the 4th one. For the first time, I've read this series one other time. The first book I think I read a couple times, but then the other 3 books, the last one I know I only read once because I bought it like immediately after it came out. Because I was anticipating it. I was so excited for it when I found out about it, so I bought it. I didn't care that it would be a little expensive because it is brand new. I had to get it right away. And I loved it. So that one I know for a fact. I only read once. Second, third books I think I only read once, maybe twice. First book I know I've read more than once. It's the one that I remember the most and it's still my favorite so far. While rereading this, all of these is still my favorite. I love all of them, I do, but first one is my favorite. I don't know. I think it's my favorite because you gotta kind of see, how the 4 main VKs became friends in the first place. I mean, Mel and Jay were already friends, even if they wouldn't admit it, because, you know, they're supposed to be bad people. They're not supposed to have friends, so they always said they weren't friends, you know, but it was obvious that they were. And then you gotta see Carlos and Evie meet, and then you gotta see Mel and Jay accept Carlos and Evie as friends and stuff, and you gotta kind of see how they were before Descendants 1, and how Ben was and stuff, and I kind of like that. I think that's part of the reason why it's my favorite. So yeah, but here is the third book. I just made a brand new intro, so tell me what you think about it, because I kind of like it, and I'm proud of it, so yeah. So I'm going to start putting those at the beginning of each of my videos. So yeah. So this is the third book. I topped it a lot, as you can tell. This book is when you actually meet Uma. If you only read the movies, then you meet her in the second movie, but this is before the second movie, because it goes Isle of the Lost, Descendants, then Return to Isle of the Lost, Rise of the Isle of the Lost, Descendants 2, Escape from Isle of the Lost, then Descendants 3. And I don't want them to make a 4th movie because because one, first of all, the movie, it would ruin the series because the 3rd movie ended perfectly. For the movies, at least, it ended the movies perfectly. And plus, it won't be the same without Carlos, whether or not they decide to replace him or kill him off or just have him not be there for some reason. It won't be the same without all 4 of them, because it's the 4 VKs, you can't do it without all 4 of them and Ben. You just can't. But Cameron did say that there won't be Descendants 4, which makes me happy. But I wouldn't mind if they made a 5th book for after Descendants 3, to kind of show you how everyone's dealing with the barrier being broken down and everything. I think that would be okay, because then Carlos can still be there and stuff. And maybe at the end, at the end of the book, like a page, do a tribute to Cameron Boyce. I don't know, but I just think that would be really sweet to see how they're living, and maybe have Mel and Ben wedding. I think that would be awesome. I think they're doing an animation short for Mel and Ben's wedding, and it makes me really nervous to watch, because like, what are they gonna do with Carlos? Who knows? But anyways, let's get into the review of this book. I love this book. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars, I believe. So yeah, in this book, they start out at the end of the second book. At the end of the second book, if you watch that review, at the end I mentioned that they all decided they were going to destroy the talismans, but I never actually showed them do that because their godmother was away and they kind of needed her wand to do it. But at the beginning, this one shows them actually destroy it, but something like happened when they did. Something happened, like some magical surge, because it was like strong magic. But right before they destroyed the talismans, they were at this festival where around the place that Ariel and Eric live, and the mermaids were doing like tricks in the water and stuff, kind of thing, and and then there was this big storm, so everyone had to leave. And Arabella, one of King Triton's granddaughters, I don't think she's daughter of Ariel and Eric. I think it's one of Ariel's many sisters. But she was kind of hanging out with them, with Evie mostly, at the festival, and then she ends up leaving. And then later on, she comes up to Evie telling her that how she had kind of stolen King Triton's trident because she wanted to prove she was his granddaughter and be able to call upon the storms that she had the power inside of her. But then it was too powerful for her to contain, so she ended up losing it. So they had to find it and return it before anyone found out about it. And so Evie asks for Mel's help, and Mel agrees, and then they end up getting Jay and Carlos' help, and then they find out by Evie's magical mirror that it was close to the barrier. Carlos was the one that was able to figure it out because he's a genius and all. Ben was away because Lonnie asked for his help because there's like this feud between the place where she grew up, where Mulan and Li Shang live, Imperial Palace or something, and with Agrabah, because they're like neighboring countries or something, and there's a feud, and so Ben was trying to help them hash it out peacefully, and Lonnie helped him do that, so they were able to solve that little issue. But Mel, Jay, Carlos, and Evie decided they needed a way to get to the barrier, so they ended up deciding to steal a boat. But Fairy Godmother caught them, and then they were all scared of being sent back to the Isle, and Jane saw them and knew something was wrong, because at this point her and Carlos's feelings for each other are growing rapidly. I mean, there was like maybe 2-ish scenes with the two of them in the second book that kind of showed their friendship a little and showed how much they care about each other, but they were really small scenes, like a couple sentence kind of scenes. But this one, they had several scenes. You know, Carlos convinces her to try out for cheerleading at the beginning, and then it even shows Audrey ask Jane for help for the cotillion at the end of this book, and have her break up with Chad at the end, which is how Descendants 2 starts, kind of. So yeah, but also I was saying. But so Jane sees them and knew something was wrong, and Carlos basically just says help, and she doesn't want to lose them, especially Carlos with how she's feeling at this point. And so she ends up and then all of a sudden Ben gets there really fast, even though he ends up telling Fairy Godmother that they were on a secret mission for him, and so they had permission to take that boat in the first place. And she was like, "Oh, thank goodness! You know, this is a big misunderstanding. I was hoping so." And then Jane was thrilled, and turns out Jane was the one that actually got Ben there fast, because she knew this was an emergency. So she asked Merlin, who was in the second book, to use magic to get Ben there right away, because it was an emergency. Well, in her eyes, it was an emergency. So yeah, and because Jane just couldn't lose Carlos, and she's like, I knew this was a big misunderstanding. So Carlos was thrilled that she helped, that she cared enough to even try to help. And oh my gosh, I ship it so much. They're so underrated. They really are. But also in this book, Jay was kind of training for Roar, which is what that fencing thing from Descendants 2 is called. So he was training for that, to try out for that. So yeah, and it also shows how he became captain at the end. Because Chad was the captain, but then he ended up beating Chad in a fencing duel, because he was kind of starting to lose it after Audrey's breakup. Audrey broke up with him, so so Jay won and then became the new captain. And yeah, so that's what I was saying again. So, Ben ended up going with them to retrieve the trident, and they went to the barrier. And so while all this was going, Uma found out about the trident too. Everyone in the Isle did. Everyone was searching for it. So Uma and Harry have been hanging out since they were kids, and you find out that Gil hung out with them a lot when they were kids too, but he kind of broke away from the group until all of this, and then he kind of gets back into the group. But they end up, that ship that they were on in the second movie, it actually showed them get that ship in this boat because they ended up having to race, and whoever won got it. And Uma and Harry made it still like, if Uma won, then Harry would be Uma's first mate. If Harry won, then Uma would be his first mate. If Uma won, then Harry would be her first mate. And if Harry won, then Uma would be his first mate. So in the end, if one of them won, then they would receive the ship, and they, in a way, they both kind of win. Uma did end up winning, but it was a close call because like Uma would beat up then Harry, then Uma, then Harry, but in the end, Uma won, and Harry became her first mate. And they also had to so they got that, and then they needed a crew, and then Gil offers his muscle because they needed more muscle, so they agreed. And Gil, I was actually saying this theory. It wasn't actually my theory. I was telling my mom about it. If you guys ever seen Watso videos, he does Disney. He doesn't his YouTube name isn't Watso videos anymore. He uses his real name now. It's called Isaac Carlson. He does Disney theories, mostly Disney, but he does like DreamWorks sometimes too, and he did a Nickelodeon show once. But yeah, mostly Disney, and he does all these theories about it and stuff, and he spits out like facts that and he had like one for the background of like one for Mel, Jay, Carlos, Evie, Uma, Harry, and Gil for their background, and one for a video for each of them. And for Gil's, he was saying how, because in the books, in the first one, you find out that Gil had two sons, Gaston Jr. and Gaston III, because he's that conceited. So it's like, why is Gil not called Gaston IV or something? And I don't think he mentioned this part, but I haven't seen that video in so long. I don't think he said this part, which was my part of the theory, but I think it has to do something similar to the whole Mel and Maleficent thing. You find out in the first book that Mel's real name is actually Maleficent, just like her mom. But she's called Mel because Maleficent's like, you haven't earned my name yet, so you will be called Mel for now, until you earn it by being truly evil and wicked like me, basically. And it's like, what if with Gil and Gaston it's the same thing? Gil is a lot like his dad and brothers in the sense that he isn't the brightest and he's extremely tough, which is two things that all three Gastons, the dad and the two brothers, have as well, which you would know if you've seen Beauty and the Beast, which I'm sure you have. Those are key points about Gaston, and Gil has those key points too. But the difference is Gaston was really mean and hateful, and Gil just isn't. And the brothers, it doesn't show them that much, but they are like that too, unless of course they're wooing a woman, just like Gaston. He was sweet when it came to Belle, for the most part, until the end, because he wanted to woo her, and that's basically how the Gastons were. At first they were nice to Evie and stuff because they wanted to woo her, this and that. Gil, he's a lot sweeter, and he doesn't do. Yes, he's a ladies' man too and stuff, but he's a lot kinder, and he has a good heart, which is something that the Gastons just don't. So my theory is that the reason why he isn't named Gaston as well is because he is too nice to earn that name or something like that. At least that's my theory. I might be wrong, but it's what I'm working on. So yeah, but I don't know how we got to this point, but let's move on. So and then they end up having to find Uma's Ursula's necklace that held those power. I mean, yeah, it's powerless with the barrier closed and all, but there might still be a little power left inside of it. But the only problem is it's shattered into pieces. But all the pieces are on the Isle because it accidentally got to the Isle instead of Auradon. So he and Sid hid it, and they were able to get it out of Sophie, his apprentice, who's actually from Auradon too. And so they end up going to the Isle of Doom, which where the four main VKs went to in the first book when they were trying to find Maleficent's scepter. And they end up having to fight skeletons because none of this, everything that was happening like wasn't from magic, it was from science. That Yen Sid put up to keep anyone who got away from Ursula's necklace, but Harry ended up falling in a hole and finding it. And then skeletons come out and they have to fight skeletons, and then I think they get shot with arrows and stuff, and they finally make it out of there, and they end up shipwrecking the boat, so it was unmovable at the end of all of this journey. But they did get Ursula's necklace, and they were able to piece it back together. They were missing one piece, but Uma had a locket, and when she opened it, it turns out she had the missing piece all along, so they were able to fix it and make it whole again. And that's when they set out to actually look for the trident. They were using what's left of Ursula's necklace's power to kind of use it as a homing beaker, because the magnetical force was from the trident's power and from Ursula's necklace's power was trying to find each other, I guess you could say. So something like that. So they were kind of using it as like a compass, I guess, to find the trident. And while they were finding the trident on the Isle, the other people, the main VKs and Ben, were trying to find it on the right outside of the Isle, and they were using Evie's magic mirror to find it. So they go to the barrier, and then Mel opens a small hole. Well, not really small, but not huge. Like doesn't just open the barrier. She kind of just makes a hole in the barrier with her spellbook, and she's trying to use her magic to bring trident to her, while Uma's trying to use her magic to bring to her. But then Uma ends up diving and getting hold of it. So Mel uses a spell to turn back time, and was able to grab it. She didn't grab it, but she was able to turn back time, so Uma didn't have it anymore. And they were using their powers, and it was fighting because they're both very powerful, and the trident was trying to find out which one was more powerful. In the end, Mel did win, obviously, and it ended up going into Mel's hand, but it still wanted to find Uma's power too, so they had to quickly close the barrier. Uma is a close second because she's pretty powerful too, but Mel is a slightly more powerful, being daughter of Maleficent and all. So they were able to do that, and Uma ended up having Mel's purple glove, and she knew it was Mel that had outsmarted her, outwitted her once again, which made her angry. So they ended up wreaking havoc on the Isle at the end of the book, and because she swore that she would get her revenge someday. But then the four VKs and Ben ended up talking to Arabella. She said she'll never do it again. She was just happy the trident was back, so she took it back to the museum. And then Evie agreed to let her magic mirror go back to the museum. Mel couldn't exactly part with her spellbook yet. And one thing I also liked was that in the second movie, everyone knows that Mel was like unhinged. She was like on her breaking point, and I think all of them were kind of breaking. They were all, but they were just better at hiding. And Mel was too distressed because of all these royal things from being the royal girlfriend and all. That's why hers was a lot more obvious. But every single one of them were hiding it, trying to hide their Isle, trying to be too Auradon. So they were all just bound to break eventually. Mel and Jay would break first, obviously. I think Jay was too busy, so his mind was able to focus more, and that's why he wasn't as unhinged as Mel, because if he wasn't so busy with like Attorney and then Roar and then all these sports things, then he probably would have broke as well. I can actually see that, because him and Mel are the ones that are more on the Isle side. Like at the beginning of this book, Mel didn't want to part with the dragon's egg from the second book because she was still drawn to the power. And Jay, he was a lot drawn to the Isle as well as Mel, because like when he was the one that suggested stealing the boat, and when they were like sneaking there to actually steal it, he was the one that, and he was getting a little excited from stealing again, and he was kind of happy about it, and it was like, and I just think so the two of them are different. Carlos and Evie kind of when they went to Ordon, they were just like, it was natural to them, like they just clicked with Ordon. Mel and Jane not so much. So yeah, and then yeah, but in this book, she could have gotten Ben in a lot of trouble from stealing that boat, you know, because whatever she does reflects on him and how he rules his kingdom. And she doesn't want to do that. And she is also really upset because she could have gotten her friends kicked out and back to the Isle, and they were all terrified, especially Evie and Carlos. And so she felt terrible, and at the end, that's when she decided she's going to be the perfect girlfriend. So she had Evie trying to make her up to make her look different than she, you know, and then this and that, and she was trying to act completely different because she felt like a fraud. She felt like she wasn't good enough. So there's some cute Evie and Doug scenes too. Like it showed in the second movie, Doug was already doing the whole report about all the clients and stuff, and on here it showed him kind of start that up, and it also showed Carlos realize he has feelings for Jane, and you could tell Jane has feelings for him at this point as well, just little things she does and stuff, and it's just really sweet. I love their scenes together. I love the friendship scenes between the four main VKs. So yeah. So yeah, Mel is, so that's kind of where she kind of starts to lose herself because she's trying too hard to be someone she's not. And then it showed Ben's, proposal, or not proposal, because that's like, well, his like proposal for the coronation to ask her to be his lady, and it showed him ask her, and it was really sweet too, and it was just cute. So yeah, and then it ends with like the pirates wreaking havoc on the Isle. That was like how it ended, but it also showed Evie come up with the idea for her fashion thing you see on the third movie, Evie for Hearts. So that was sweet too. So it kind of ties a lot of things together. So yeah, I definitely give this whole series a read. You should definitely start from the beginning, and you kind of get more of a detail from in between the movies and stuff and before the first movie. So it's awesome, and you should definitely give it a try if you're a fan of the movies. So that's it for this video. Please like and subscribe and comment your thoughts on this book, if you like it, if you want to try it, or whatnot, and we'll chat below. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads as Secret Books, and I will talk to you guys later.